Welcome to the Geek Homeworld. I am your host, Ed, aka SavageTechman. We talk sci-fi, TV, movies, superheroes, and all from a geek perspective. You can find us on Blogger, Google+, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. We're everywhere. Join the Geek Homeworld. Welcome to a live chat here on Facebook Live at Geek Homeworld, and also this will be an episode, I think it's 116, if it all works out well, for the Geek Homeworld podcast. We just went and saw Spiderman Homecoming premiere night, and let me get my camera in focus there a little bit there. Okay, and it was awesome. It was a spectacular film, directed by John Watts, writing credits, based on Steve Ditko, the wonderful Stan Lee, and of course, Chris McKenna and Eric Summers. Chris McKenna and Eric Summers did the screenplay for it. And what an exceptional film. It was emotional, of course, coming off of this being the film closing out phase 3, and also talking about dealing with the aftermath of what Spider-Man Far From Home calls the blip. And this film has a lot of heart. It has a lot of humor in it, and it is just very, very fun to watch. And so it's pretty cool. It's a great film. I did hear someone in the audience yell out, "This is better than Endgame," and I don't know if I can agree with that, but I did thoroughly enjoy it. The graphics were awesome on there, and the visual effects. There's a whole sequence in the film, and I'm gonna do my best here not to spoil it, but the visual effects were very well done. Kudos to the team behind that. So yes, it was very, very interesting to see that. So, a lot of bang for your buck. It was well worth it to see the film. It's one I could definitely see myself going back to see later. I don't feel that anyone, that you would miss much, like the first time around, but there are some key components to it. There's a mid-scene credit, and still to this day, I do not understand why people leave a Marvel film, and I've noticed this with other films that aren't Marvel. You kind of expect it, but there's a mid-scene credit, which is important. It's just not a throwaway moment. No, it's not. At first you think it is, and then there's a WTF moment there where it's not, and then the after credit scene was spectacular also. These words like spectacular Spider-Man, that was nothing like that, but I really can't say what it was, because I'm trying not to spoil this, but it was a very important scene, something you don't see coming. At least I don't think most people saw it coming. I didn't see it coming. Maybe, if I thought about it a little bit more, maybe I would have seen it coming, but I did not. But the mid-credit scene, I was sitting in my seat there. We saw it at AMC, because that's pretty much all the theaters we have in my town now, and which is fine with me. Packed house. It was the 7:15 show that we saw. There were no like Tuesday night previews of this, or I mean Monday night previews or anything, and they brought it out on the 2nd, which is today, July 2nd, when I'm recording this. So the film came out, and it was. I mean, there were no like previews before that, so there were no previews, and that was very interesting because, you know, usually they'll have a night before, and like when Homecoming came out, Spider-Man Homecoming, it had those previews from before, and you didn't have that on Far From Home. So if you know, we just have today, which is Tuesday, and by the time I'm recording this, it's going to probably be Wednesday almost, but spectacular film. You need to see this. This film, I was more excited to see this Spider-Man film than like Captain Marvel, because Captain Marvel was, you know, a bookend between Infinity War and Endgame, so it naturally had a build-up like that. You know, it had a built-in like multiplier, you know, and which a lot of the Marvel films that lead up to the big Avengers event films do. But and this one was coming off of Endgame and everything that happened with the blip, as they call it in the film. It's not called the snap, and it opens in the most unusual way, and I can't tell you what it is without spoiling it, but it was incredibly, it was funny. It was touching at first, but then you realize it's a little bit more fun to it. So this movie has a lot of heart, like I said, and it's very funny. It's pretty awesome. It's a pretty awesome experience, and I'm glad I got to see it opening night. It's always best to see it. Like I said, we saw it in the Big D at the AMC, so you get the hyped up crowd that were age ranges all over the place. In fact, there was someone sitting maybe a row or two behind us, and during the film, there was an older couple in front of us, and the gentleman took his phone out, and, you know, it's the dark theater, and the film's playing, and some guy behind me got up, kind of went down a couple stairs, and he asked them to please turn his phone off. I've never seen people do that, and you know, and they were a little miffed about that. They were not happy about that, but I'm glad they did that. But that was pretty cool. The guy came down the steps, and then he went back up, because he was not going to have his film experience spoiled by someone in their bright phone and all that. You know, when I go to a theater, I turn my phone down to super dark, or you know, turn off all the notifications and everything, and block everything else that I can out of it. So that was funny. There were a lot of really great moments in this film, and the mid-credits scene, I literally I was sitting like on the row here, so I was like, I was gonna yell or whatever, you know, because it's one of those WTF kind of moments, and I hit my hand down real hard on the left armrest, and I was like, ow. But because there's something that's paid off in that mid-credit scene. There's one thing that will blow your mind, and that you don't see coming. There's no hint that this is gonna show up in the film, and it does. And I'm purposely trying to use the right pronouns here, or actually the wrong pronouns, so that you don't guess what it is. I'm just going to say it. So it appears, and I could not have seen that coming, and I don't want to spoil it for you, but you'll know by the crowd reaction. You'll know by how your reaction is if you've been following Spider-Man. And to see the scene was awesome. I don't know if this is spoilers or not, but I don't think it is because it's already been out there that Stan Lee's last cameo, at first they said the last one would be in Spider-Man Far From Home, and then they came out and definitively said that Endgame was the last that we'd see of Stan Lee. And of course they added that wonderful tribute to the expansion of that, and I'm going to pivot the conversation just to talk about that for a minute, about Avengers Endgame. And by the way, if you're watching live on Facebook Live at Geek Homeworld, give me a thumbs up on this or whatever. You're welcome to comment. You're welcome to ask me questions. I'm not going to give away anything that's spoilers about this film. That would not be fair. I will probably do this. I'm recording this. I'm a recorder, so this is going to turn out into an episode of the Geek Homeworld podcast that you can find, which you'll find flagged here on the Facebook page, but also at the main site, geekhomeworld.libsyn.com. And I think it's over on another site too, but it's on iTunes and everywhere, Google Podcasts. So anyway, Avengers Endgame was re-released, and I don't know whether, well, it was just for that weekend, so I think it's gone. I think 10 weeks was enough for it. You know, now the momentum is on Spider-Man. I can still see Avengers Endgame. But if you're up with anything on the internet, you already know that the scenes have been explained for Avengers Endgame. So if there's some reason you didn't see Avengers Endgame, turn down the sound, turn away, come back later when you've seen it, if you get to see it, because I think it's going to be pulled from theaters now that Spider-Man is out. You know, it's ran 10 weeks in theaters and done extremely well. But, you know, that you got the free poster for going to see that over this past weekend leading up to the release of Spider-Man Far From Home. So there was a deleted scene, or a scene that was cut from the movie that was not finished, and I'm kind of surprised that Marvel would put something out there that wasn't finished. I thought that they probably thought they were doing the fan service, which Endgame could have been an even better film had it not been so much fan service, but I'm gonna not gonna knock Endgame, because Endgame was incredible. We could talk about, was Infinity War better? Some people liked it better. They were different movies, you know, Infinity War versus Endgame. But Endgame had everybody that you wanted to see there. And I'm glad Marvel gave us long-time fans that have watched this since the first Iron Man, that have followed the MCU. Excuse me. For people that have followed the MCU, and it was a good payoff to see, you know, finally hear Avengers assemble, and, you know, and all that. So, but this scenes that you ended up getting, the three scenes, were, in no particular order, were this Incredible Hulk scene. Instead of seeing Professor Hulk where we saw him in the cafe, and that worked well, that worked much better in the film, and I can see why that's in the film, versus this scene that they showed at the re-release, because it was still, and that's another thing, Avengers Endgame, I don't understand why it's called a re-release, because it never left theaters. It was still in 995 theaters nationwide, but it expanded. It was really, should have been called an expansion, and it was not really a director's cut. There wasn't anything added, just these scenes tacked on to the end of the film, so nothing was different. Anyway, so you have this scene, instead of this was our first, would have been how they introduced Professor Hulk, which is Banner and Hulk, you know, together as one entity working together. And so what we got was a scene of, and like I said, the CGI was not complete. So you have this burning building, and then the Incredible Hulk shows up, and there's this big, like, oversized satellite dish, and he lifts that up and gets the people down out of the fire, but you see that it's Hulk and Banner, so it's Professor Hulk, as they call him in the comics. So We see that there was a wonderful tribute to Stan Lee at the end also. And what was the other thing? Oh, it was basically, this may be a little spoilerish, so I don't think it is, but I don't know. But basically, the preview that you saw at the end of Endgame is your opening scenes, is the opening scene for Spider-Man Far From Home. So that preview of Spider-Man Far From Home was basically the opening scene. So you got the opening scene of Far From Home preview. You have this unfinished Hulk scene that wasn't in the film in the final cut. They went with a different version of Hulk, Professor Hulk in the cafe, and then you have the wonderful tribute to Stan Lee. Now, Spider-Man Far From Home. Another question here. Well, I guess I need to, before we go forward with that. And by the way, leave your comments if you want. I'll definitely interact with you here on Facebook Live, and we'll talk whatever, as long as it's not spoilers. So, but about Avengers Endgame, we ended up with making roughly about maybe $5 million over the weekend with that I call expansion, they call re-release. And it brought Avengers, when you add up the total for worldwide box office, it's not going to catch on domestic. It's not going to catch, no way at all. It can go from was it $788 million? Ridiculous. Or is that right? Yeah. On the domestic side. No, excuse me. No, it was much higher than that. Is around 880 million. It's not going to catch the 36 million of The Force Awakens. So that's going to remain the number one domestic film of all time. Avengers Endgame will be number 2. There's just no way. It's impossible at this point. But worldwide, this release, which a lot of the fans, not everybody went out to see the re-release of Avengers Endgame. So even worldwide, so it's only within about $27 million of beating the worldwide record of, they're both like 2.788 billion for Avatar, and then Endgame is like well, just do the math. It's 27. I'm not going to try to do math. This podcast is not about math. But, so you're looking at roughly like 788 million. 2,788 million for Avatar, which is probably going to stick. Unless people go back, if Endgame stays in the theater and people rush out to see that and, bounce back and forth between seeing Spider-Man this weekend and that. I don't know. I don't think they're going to do that, but I might. But I may have missed my window. I wasn't able to go to see the Endgame special edition or whatever. It's already going to be on Blu-ray by the end of July, August, and streaming and everything, and I'll get it there and watch over the scenes I want to watch over and over and over and over. And during Infinity War, probably my favorite scene, well, there's a lot of favorite scenes, but minus the snap, was Thor coming back, and in that bring me Thanos moment, and he did Thor so great, his character in that, and really kind of redeemed him. Ragnarok was kind of a rebirth of what they did with the character, and they just totally threw a lot out the window, and they kept making those changes into Endgame, and I liked what they did with the larger version, the unkept kind of depressed version of Thor. Even though he's a god, he's he's like the rest of us. He feels remorse, pain, and pity, and self-pity, and he overcame those things and found out he was still worthy, and brought Mjolnir back, and eventually Cap got to use it to fight, and that was incredible. And in game, it was like a comic book coming alive, and so I love the fan service of that. Maybe that fan service didn't do the film justice in the sense that could have been a better film, but Infinity War, there was just that shock and the snap, or the blip as now it's referred to, and they play around with that, the blip, how it's referred to in Spider-Man Far From Home. So they play around with that idea, and how people were like, they show pictures, he was, I don't know, 8 years old, now he's 18 or whatever the math is, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, to be 13. So they're probably older than that. They were like teenagers, and they were like, almost high school or whatever ages the kids were in there. And so, the personalities hadn't changed. It just grew up pretty quick, or the people that were left behind, and they actually talk about it. That's addressed. I'm glad it's addressed in the film. There's a lot of riding on Spider-Man's shoulders. I mean, he gets put through the ringer, and he just is a simple guy that just wants to have a summer vacation, tell the girl he loves that he loves her, and just, have a good time, and on their trip to Europe, and, he ghosted Nick Fury, and you don't ghost Nick Fury, so, Tom Holland, I like Tobey Maguire in the original trilogy of films, the Sam Raimi trilogy of films of Spider-Man. Spider-Man 2 is still probably, it's the best Spider-Man film. But I tell you, Spider-Man Far From Home, and now Spider-Man Homecoming, and now Spider-Man Far From Home, I enjoyed Far From Home, I think, more than Homecoming, and even though it was good, and Tom Holland plays a great Peter Parker and a great Spider-Man, and of course the technology is there so they can do more with CGI than they could, way back in the early 2000s with the original Spider-Man trilogy, and but for me, Tobey Maguire, in retrospect, I think Tobey Maguire was a solid Peter Parker, but he was always too old for that role. Even Andrew Garfield in The Amazing Spider-Man, 1 and 2 that he did, he may have been a better Spider-Man because there were things they could do with the CGI. And some people, say that was their favorite Spider-Man. And that's fine, it's kind of like Batman. Anybody can kind of play it. Like, I'm holding my breath for Robert Pattinson, and to see how well he's going to do with the Batman, as it's called, or whatever it's going to be called. And they've loaded that film down with the Penguin, Catwoman, and is it the Riddler, I think? So that worries me. That gives us the whole Spider-Man 3 with Venom, Sandman, and who's the other person? But, and Topher Grace, I thought, did a good job of playing Venom, but, it's, we have emo Spider-Man dancing down the thing, dancing down the street. That's probably the lowest of the whole Spider-Man franchise, and a lot of people don't like the third film. It seems to usually be that way, like The Last Stand, which was the third in that trilogy, and then actually the third and fourth of the last X-Men. What is 4 films? The trilogy is 3, so I'm not sure what 4 is. Do you know what 4 is? Anyway, so I know a lot of people aren't watching this, or maybe they're staying away because it's Spider-Man, but it's non-spoilers, so come back and watch this video, and feel free to comment on it. Anyway, so in the film we get to see Samuel Jackson. Samuel Jackson is great. There's nothing that he can do wrong. He is just one of my favorite actors, and he's perfect as Nick Fury. It's funny because he has now defined that role. I can't see anybody else. There'll probably be a day when Nick Fury isn't around. Samuel Jackson may not be around. He's in his 70s if you think about it, but he's still badass. He's still kicking ass, and it's interesting, and you'll see in this film his arc of where he's going. And I don't know how long his arc goes, but it's nice to know that he's still there, and Maria Hill is in the film, so it's brings you back to both of them, and that where she got dusted, and they both got dusted at the end of Infinity War. So there are some things. There are a lot of issues. There are things I can't talk about if I'm going to truly keep this a non-spoiler episode. So, but Tom Holland does great. Marissa Tomei is May Parker, or Aunt May. He calls her May now. Her and Happy Hogan was Jon Favreau, who directed, of course, the first Iron Man. Who's Tony Stark's best friend. He's dealing with loss. He's dealing with moving on. And there's some great scenes with him and Tom Holland as Peter Parker, and talking about, the torch being passed from Iron Man to him. And, Robert Downey Jr., it's still a sore open wound that, for fanboys and fangirls and fan people, whatever, out there, it really still is, and it probably will be for a long time, seeing where Phase 4 goes, because Spider-Man Far From Home ends Phase 3 of the MCU, the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I'm looking forward to Galactus. I'm looking forward to Fantastic Four. When we get the announcement and they do a 4 talking about that, it's going to be a prelude to Fantastic Four. We're going to see Guardians of the Galaxy 3. James Gunn's back on board. He has confirmed, I don't know if you know this, but I saw this on the internet, so it must be true, that it's not going to be called as Guardians of the Galaxy, though I would have no problems with that. I love the idea of Thor and Peter Quill and the rest of them, of the Guardians going off, of course, together as a group. I like that. And who's in charge and all that dynamic is fun. The 2012 Gamora is what we're dealing with now. Is it 2012? Or the 2014, whatever the year, because this is not our Gamora, my Gamora. So she's not really interested in Peter Quill, so that gives them a chance to rewrite that story and them to find their way back to each other, or just, not become a thing. And so that'll be interesting to see. I mean, I'm excited for the third Guardians. We're going to have to wait probably a couple years for that. So, then they're going to be announcing soon. Marvel will be all their Phase 4 movies. I saw a look at some of the titles, which I don't want to really give away right here and right now. It's a lot coming, so in the Marvel universe, so excited. Let's see. Quentin Beck, aka Mysterio, brilliantly played by Jake Gyllenhaal. Almost didn't recognize it was him. And there's a moment in the film that every true fan is gonna, when he's, because he befriends Peter Parker, but if you know your comics, Mysterio's not a hero. And so there's a lot to be told. Are there actually multiverses? I say no. I say that would be a great possibility, but I say no if Mysterio is telling it, because Mysterio, he is not what he appears to be or who he appears to be. You're going to find that out in the film. It's going to be said, or it'll be explained. It'll all be explained in the film. But that shouldn't be a shock to anybody unless you've never heard of Mysterio. So, but Mysterio is one of Spider-Man's major villains. So, and brilliantly played by Jake Gyllenhaal as Quentin Beck as Mysterio. So, Zendaya is MJ. I was not at first a fan of her as MJ. No particular reason. I just didn't feel the chemistry, but I warmed up to her. I in this film, I'm like, I'm on board with it. I'm good. You know, no particular reason. I just, you know, I didn't feel the chemistry between them as much, and maybe it wasn't in Homecoming. It was. I know it was a central part of the film, and so, you know, it's set up for another Spider-Man film, and that mid-credit scene's gonna blow your mind. It will just blow your mind. It'll. I mean, the internet is gonna go crazy over it, with what it could mean. But that ending scene, I already saw a report that said these are the most substantial mid-credit scene and end scene since Iron Man, which I don't know if that's necessarily true. We may find out that, but I will say that it is very important. It's very central to what's coming, so very important that way to know what's coming down the pipeline in Phase 4 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So, I don't know. I'm excited. I am super, super excited for where it's going. I told you I want to see Silver Surfer pop up, which means I want Galactus in there, which will make Thanos look like nothing, basically. You know, when you have someone that devours planets, that eats planets, yeah, that's getting kind of up there. I can't. I'm really thinking hard of what I can say without really spoiling Spider-Man Far From Home. Do I recommend it? By all means, yes. 2 thumbs up or whatever. I enjoyed it more than Homecoming. Homecoming was very good, Spider-Man Homecoming, but Spider-Man Far From Home is even better, I think. And like I said, there were some CGI and some action sequences that are just top notch, and the effects teams that worked on this film, bravo, you've done an excellent job. I mean, some of that is mind-bending, and I hope to see it in IMAX 3D. I think it could be, if you're kind of, you know, motion sickness. I kind of felt a little motion sicknessy to some of that in IMAX. I may feel that way. I don't know. But I thought it was kind of borderline on being there. Also, some wonderful people that are in there. You know, you've got, let's see, Ned Leeds, which is Jacob Batalon. I hope I'm saying that right. Such a great, like, sidekick but best friend for Peter Parker, and I just, his character is wonderful, and he has a story arc. It goes pretty quick in Spider-Man Far From Home, and it's hilarious, and it's really cool. And you have Flash Thompson, played by Tony Revolori, Revolori. I've got some notes here, and he does a wonderful job as Flash Thompson, and he thinks Spider-Man's the coolest thing, but he can't stand Peter Parker, and it's so funny. You have a lot of there's Mr. Dell is one of the teachers that's like watching over them, and you know, he's played by JB Smoove, and he's just hilarious. And there is I don't want to say, gosh, there's some names on here I can't say because I don't want to spoil anything. There's a hashtag I already want to use, and I don't want to say what it is, but it's an acronym for, I can't even say what it is an acronym for without spoiling it. But if you know acronyms, one letter stands for something, and they usually will spell out a name or a word. So when you see the film, you'll know what I'm talking about. Wow, I'm looking at the name of... I'm saying it. I don't want to say he or she, because I don't want to spoil it, but this person, this entity, this actor is playing an important role in the mid-scene credits. So there's like two just like plot bombs that are just dropped right in those scenes. You just think it's gonna be, oh, that's that, and they're like, whoa, no, there's a lot more, and there's this reveal that, and you're like, oh yeah, and then you're like, then the other shoe drops, and it's even more menacing, you know, what it could potentially lead to. So that's all I've got, basically. Not too many people are probably up right now. Everybody's probably still doing their thing that they're doing. But I want to thank you for joining me for this episode of the Geek Homeworld podcast and this live video chat, as I called it, about Spider-Man. Non-spoiler. Hopefully I kept as non-spoilery as I could. But this is the Geek Homeworld podcast, and here on Facebook. And let me know what you think. Please comment on the video on Facebook at Geek Homeworld on Facebook. You can follow my tweets about things and geek centered and, you know, related at Geek Homeworld on Twitter. And of course the main website for the podcast, which you'll hear this is an episode, is geekhomeworld.libsyn.com. That's LIBSYN.com. On Google Podcast, Geek Homeworld. What is it? It's not iTunes anymore. It's Apple Podcasts. You can check out our back catalog there also of Geek Homeworld. I think it's on... I don't know if we're on Anchor yet or whatever, but we're in a few places. So, but we're in the major ones. So just search for Geek Homeworld and it'll come up. So anyway, I don't see anybody that really commented. There may have been some people that popped in. I saw some people pop in and out of the video here, but they didn't comment, so I don't know who they are. So if you don't say anything, I don't know who you are. So anyway, I hope you get out to see this weekend. Box office projections are around 125 million. I mean, when you add the whole long Tuesday, which is today, Wednesday, it's probably Wednesday now as I'm recording this, but I started on Tuesday. So there's the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, which is Independence Day, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So you're looking at a 6-day weekend. They're looking at 125 on the low side, what the studio says, because they don't want to over predict, but some estimates are 180, 190 million for 6 days. I think it's possible. I don't know if this gets an A or an A plus, but I tell you, I thoroughly enjoyed this film. It was a good cinematic experience. It's much better in Big D. Probably be even better in IMAX 3D, but all around the cast was wonderful. There's a lot of things in here you got to keep your eyes open because there's some Easter eggs in it, and some things like that mid-credit scene. I keep talking about it, but it's gonna blow your mind. It's gonna blow your mind. And after credit scenes, gonna be a shocker too. And it's gonna lead to, I could see it leading to some other things I can't say, blah blah blah. But anyway, so go out and see Spider-Man Far From Home. Don't wait to see it. Go out and see it. Get your Marvel fix on, and Disney's got another blockbuster on their hands, and I'm glad. And Spider-Man is really going to be truly taking up the mantle of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's a passing of the torch. It's certainly a younger actor. No one can ever, like Happy says in the film, no one can ever replace Tony. But, you know, it's Tom Holland's, if he is, from what I'm reading, going to be one of the main focuses of the, you know, Phase 4, and that's fine. He'll do great. He's growing into the role. He's already got the Spider-Man character down. He's doing a fabulous job, and I hope we see several more films with Spider-Man in it. There was talk about a Spider-Man Venom crossover, but I don't think that needs to happen just yet. And there's not really been an indication that it will or won't in this film, so I better end this stream before I end up giving something away, and I don't want to do that. But anyway, thank you. If you're interested in the film industry, I also do a show called Savannah on Film. That is, you can go on the Facebook page, Savannah on Film, and every Saturday, my local time, East Coast time here in the U.S., from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m., I talk to people at different levels of the film industries, and not just the Savannah area proper, but, you know, areas around that, and people that have worked in film, and the value they bring to the film community, and some of the productions going on. So a lot going on over there. Savannah on Film. If you want to head over and like that Facebook page, that's awesome. I know I turned that into a podcast now, so, because a lot of people are asking, so it's been submitted to Apple Podcasts. I don't know if it's gone through yet. It's on Google, available on Google Podcast, Savannah on Film, and I've been doing it for a year in about 3 weeks, I think, roughly. So you can go there and you can see different episodes that are posted, and I put them as different seasons. You know, the first year was about 48 episodes, so I've been kind of started off with a few of the very first episodes, and then I'm slowly putting in the others and some of the later ones that are on there, the most recent ones, and then I'll probably pick and choose a few to fill in the blanks there as time goes on. But you can check that out on Anchor, which is great if you're driving in your car and you've got Waze. Anchor is one of the apps you can download and listen, so you can listen to the podcast. That's cool. Always appreciate your feedback. Thank you all very much for listening tonight, and go out and see Spider-Man Far From Home. And this is going to be it. And if you have any questions, comments, please leave them. Thank you. Appreciate. And let me just double check. There's no comment. That's me leaving a comment. Okay. All right. Well, I'm Ed, aka SavageTechman, as some people know me in Xbox Live Gaming. Thank you for joining Geek Homeworld, and we'll see you again later. Thanks. Goodbye.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Geek Homeworld with your host, SavageTechman. You can find us on Libsyn, Google+, follow and interact with us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, listen to us on iTunes and leave a review, subscribe to us on YouTube, read our thoughts on Blogger. See you again on the Geek Homeworld.